You are now locked into the Tech Dialogue podcast, where we discuss life both inside and outside of tech with great people from all around the world. So whether you're new to tech or a seasoned pro, sit back, relax and get ready to collect those gems with your host, Kelvin Charles. Welcome back to another episode of the Tech Dialogue with myself, Kelvin Charles, aka Network Wizkid. In this podcast, we're going to be talking about being expendable. So the title of this podcast is We Are All Expendable. Now, just before I actually get into the podcast and the topic of conversation today, I just wanted to give an update as to where I've been and what I've been doing these last few months, because it's been a little while since I did the last podcast episode. And to be quite frank, I've had a lot going on in my life with work and also personally, so I've just not had the opportunity to really get around to delivering these podcasts. But nevertheless, I am back and I have a great topic for conversation today, and something that really hit me last month with regards to being expendable, and I really wanted to talk about this today with you listeners, because I'm sure many of you can relate or will at some point relate, and I think it's an important topic to speak about. Now, I want to start this podcast with a post on LinkedIn from a user called Aidan Broder, and the reason I want to start with this is because it really resonated with me, especially this past month. Aidan says, I am 100% replaceable at work. No matter my title, level, relationships, or comp, I am 100% irreplaceable at home. My kids will only ever have one dad. No matter how important you are at work, how influential you've become, how many professionals depend on you, they'd all be okay if you left. Prioritize spending time with the people who can't replace you. Have a great weekend. Now, why is that important? That's important because it's important to the topic that we're discussing today with regards to being expendable. Now, just last month, we're now at the start of November, just last month, I was in a position where I was no longer required in the job role that I had been doing for a few years, and that put me at risk of redundancy. And it's quite honestly a position that I didn't think I would ever be in, especially with the skills, the knowledge, and also being in cybersecurity. I didn't think I would ever be in that position, but it, nevertheless, I found myself there. So it looks like even though there is a skill shortage in cybersecurity across the world, cybersecurity professionals are still expendable. So that's something that I didn't really think about until I was in that position last month. And that's because, as I said, the skills shortage across the world, my skills in general, and the value I believe that I bring to the company that I work for, I didn't think I would ever be in a position like that. But it just goes to show that no matter the current issues with cybersecurity professionals or trying to retain or even get cybersecurity professionals, it doesn't matter how bad it is, everybody is still replaceable, and companies can and will get rid of you if they see a need to do so. So just to sort of give you a little bit more of a background as to where all this is coming from, last month, October, I was doing my day-to-day job as a cybersecurity systems engineer, and one day I woke up with an immediate meeting, or an important meeting, to join a call. It was on that call I found out that my job position was no longer required, and within the next 30 days, actually less than 30 days, I would be made redundant if I hadn't found other suitable work inside the company that I was working for, or suitable employment external to the company. This came as a big shock. I won't say that I wasn't aware of this, or I wouldn't say that I didn't know that this would or could happen because of recent changes within the organization, within the company. But it came as a big shock because I thought that one, it wouldn't come too soon, and two, the skills and the value that I add to the business and my tenure at the company would be sort of something that would be looked at to find or put me in other suitable positions within the business. Now, when I was notified of the potential redundancy, there wasn't any other suitable positions for me at the time within the company. So for me, again, I was shocked. I had to take all this in, and the possibility of leaving a company that I really enjoyed working at, to potentially looking at other opportunities outside the business, all within the next less than 30 days. So it was a big shock, a lot to take in. The 30 days notice, I think, was what shocked me the most, because of how soon that would be, and really not leaving me with a lot of time to focus on other suitable employment, whether that be inside the company or external to the company. But nevertheless, it was something that I had to deal with it. At the time, aside from being shocked, I was, I think the thing with being shocked was the time, and also because I'd not put a foot wrong within the time I'd been at the company, which is currently over 7 years. And, I was a big advocate of I still am a big advocate of the company. But aside from being shocked, I guess, I was disappointed because I felt as though at the time, no one had sort of looked at what they were potentially going to be losing from the company in terms of me. And I believe in myself. I believe I'm good at my job. I am good at my job. I understand the business, the company, and like I said, I've never put a foot wrong. So at the time when I got the news, I felt a little bit disappointed, and as though I was sort of left on the fence to rot for the next 30 days unless I found another position, and no one really cared about me now because I was just tossed to the side. And it's not a nice feeling, but nevertheless, me being me and the character I am, I sort of found some determination to press along and go after what I wanted. And for me, it was to stay with the company. I had no intention of leaving the company. I was obviously put in a position which I had no control over. So for me, I really wanted to stay with the company, because despite feeling disappointed at the process and how it happened, and knowing that, at least from what I believe, it wasn't anything personal, I genuinely do enjoy the company that I work for. I enjoy the culture, which for me is a massive thing. I think it's really, it's an important thing to find a company where you can become part of that culture and enjoy the culture. Aside from pay and everything else, I think culture is a big thing for me. And I also enjoy the technology, and being with a company for over 7 years, you become well integrated into the system and the processes, etc., and understand the technologies and see how those technologies also evolve over time. So for me, it was not something I wanted to just let go of that easy, because it would then mean potentially having to look for other opportunities where I had to start all over again. And there's no problem with doing that, but for me, I just feel as though I had unfinished business and a lot more to offer to the company, and also to get out of the company where I actually was. So being determined and enjoying and loving the company that I sort of work for, I decided to stay as level-headed as possible while also considering other options external to the business. So for me, the main focus over the next less than 30 days, let's say I think you were around maybe 28 days or so, the focus for me was to really try and see whether I could secure another position inside to the company. But at the same time, I knew that it was a possibility that I would not be able to secure a position and have to look external. So being me and being determined, I would look for positions on the job portal every day, our internal job portal, to see whether there was anything that was posted that was suitable to me. And although there was opportunities already on there, one important thing for me was not just to apply for any position that wasn't really suited for me, or a position where I felt like I wouldn't enjoy, because there is not worse than waking up every day, I believe, and going to a job that you don't enjoy. So for me, it was important to find a position that I felt would be suitable for me, and felt as though a position that I would be suited to would have to be a position that I would enjoy. So I continued to look on a daily basis. I also reached out to people externally as well. I applied for positions externally as well, and kind of chatting uncharted territory, because I've been with the company that I'm with for so long now. It was one of those where I felt like a sort of baby looking for work external to the business, because things had sort of changed over those years that I'd been with the company. But nevertheless, I spruced up my CV, got it sent out there, connected with people, and managed to get a few interviews scheduled, which was really good, and that sort of built up that confidence, at least from an external standpoint, that I felt like I needed at the time. Now, applying for external positions, I managed to get a few interviews, like I said, and at the same time I also found a internal job that was posted that was something that I thought would be relevant to me, and that role would be a role that included a promotion, pay rise, and at the same time it was also a role that was posted that others could see, and when others were also in that same situation, it was basically game on in terms of anyone being able to apply for it and having to go through the interview process again. So that was something that I had on the back of my mind at the same time, but nevertheless that didn't deter me from applying for that position. And my main focus was at the time to obviously secure that new internal role that had been posted. I had no sort of clue of how many other people had applied for it, and to be quite frank, didn't really care, because my focus was on sort of me doing my best to be able to get that job. I also had at the same time an interview externally for a contracting role. Now, this was something that I had not explored before, but as the days went by, was something that I was sort of being a little bit more open to, the possibility of contracting. But I think one thing for me with contracting was even though I believe I have the skills to sort of go at it alone and do that, I think one big thing for me was job security. I think, ironically, I wanted that job security, and the reason I say ironically, because working for a company for so long, for them to get on a call one day and say basically you got 30 days, that's no real job security in my eyes. In my opinion, after sort of being through that experience, you never really do have job security in my eyes now, because companies can just get rid of you pretty much like that. But when I talk about job security, I talk about everything else that comes with being employed as opposed to contracting. So, you're sort of looking at your benefits package, redundancy, pension, all that sort of stuff, which are things that you don't really get with contracting, because you have to sort of make provisions for those things yourself as well. So for me, it was an idea that I was playing with the contracting role, if I had to go down that route. But then at the same time, I don't think, as I said, I wasn't really ready to be leaving the company that I was with, and I had no intention of leaving the company that I was with. And my choice, if comparing the contracting role and full-time employment, would be to, at this moment in time, to select that full-time employment for that security. So I did the interview externally. I managed to get through that interview and was offered that position as well. But at the same time, I just conducted the interviews internally as well for the company that I was with. And so I was in a little bit of a dilemma, and also really wanted to wait to hear the results of the internal job before sort of giving any response back to the external company. So I just asked them if they could sort of hang fire with my answer, because obviously I wasn't going to turn it down without having a result from the company that I was already working with. But at the same time, I would prefer to have that internal role as opposed to the contracting role at this point. So they held off and waited for me to sort of get back to them with an answer. And at the same time, I think at the time, towards the end of a Friday, I got the results back from my company that I work for, and I had successfully managed to get the new role that come with a promotion and a pay rise. And for me, that was the position that I ended up accepting, because that's the route that I wanted to go. In the end, I sort of had a sense of excitement and joy, and was really grateful for being able to land that other internal role. But then at the same time, I was put in that position again and challenged to compete against others, essentially, for one position. And also, you're not just competing against anyone, you're also competing against others that are in the same situation already in the company, and therefore, likely going to understand the business, also likely going to be, quite skillful, or good assets working for the company already. So I knew that competition was going to be tough, but I believed in myself and ended up getting the role in the end. So I turned down the contracting position, and I just sort of spent the rest of the evening reflecting on the whole process and sort of what I'd been through the past month, essentially trying to re-secure my position in the company that I was in, and managed to do that. So I think the lessons that I learned from the whole process, in terms of being notified to having to re-interview internally for another role, and to sort of reprove myself, if you like, and as well as sort of interviewing externally and seeing what's available, and being open to new opportunities and positions. I think I picked up a lot, and I learned a lot that I didn't necessarily think I thought about before being put in that position. So I'm kind of grateful in a weird way that I was put in that position, because in the end it sort of worked out better for me in terms of, I managed to secure an actual pay rise and a promotion from the role that was actually going away, but at the same time the position that I was in meant that I could potentially have lost my position within I did lose my position within the business, but actually I could have right now be talking to you as an ex-employee of that company. So I think things weirdly worked out in the end how as best they could, I would say. But I also take a lot away from the process and being put in that position. As I started at the start of the podcast with that post from Aidan, and also with the title of this podcast being We Are All Expendable, I now know that regardless of your value, how skilled you are, how long you've worked for a company, what you've done for a company, none of that matters. None of it matters, because at the end of the day, we are all expendable. And I never thought I never thought I would be put in a position like that after getting all the skills relevant to sort of prove myself to do, or to even work for a company, and also be in cybersecurity, where, as I said, we have a global skills shortage where companies can't even employ cybersecurity professionals, let alone retain them. So I never thought I would be in a position like that. I thought being in cybersecurity, aside from the fact that I, absolutely love cybersecurity and enjoy everything that I do in cybersecurity, I never thought that the cybersecurity professionals would ever be put in a position like that. But now I know that regardless of everything, you are technically just another number. And although I managed to retain employment, as I said, I still had to go through a process like everybody else to be able to sort of prove myself to do the job as well. There was sort of no there was sort of no lifelines in terms of, oh no, we know that this guy is really good and he understands X, Y, and Z. Let's put him in this position and keep him so that we don't lose him. It was sort of me out there having to fend for myself pretty much again, and by utilizing the connections that I had, making new connections, doing new things that I had not done in terms of looking for employment and speaking to other people externally about positions. All things that I had not really thought were important before actually became important. And now I believe that I look at work in a different light now. Being put in that position, I look at work in a different light now. I often, having a family, made time for my family as well, but I must admit, being so curious and into technology and the way that things work and how fast technology is advancing, I would find myself in certain times spending time focusing on technology or being on the computer as opposed to spending that time with the family. For me now, that is something that is absolutely going to take priority, because now I realize that me breaking my back the way that I have often done many times before, it's not something that anybody cares about in the end. And yes, it might look good in the immediate moment or when something needs to be done and somebody's watching, but when you get placed in situations like this, nobody remembers those things that you've done that have helped to advance the company or change somebody's perception, or whatever it may be. You're just another number, essentially. I have also realized one thing that really helped me, I believe, is my determination, as I pointed out before, but also my determination and motivation and drive when it comes to learning new things. You, as a listener, are likely going to know about networkwizkid.com, where I publish a lot of articles around technical content, etc., and my YouTube channel, etc., and the things that I do within the community outside of work. All those things, I believe, sort of help in a way, because it's all content that I have put together, and at the same time, while it's there to help other individuals, it's also being used as a tool for me to self-develop myself and learn new technologies and understand new concepts. So now I really believe that self-development is, and it's not that I didn't before, but I believe that the emphasis on self-development should be a key focus at all times, because I think when you join a company or get to a certain level or understand something that is required for your role, oftentimes you see people just get comfortable and the self-development process kind of stalls. And I now realize that if you let that happen, if you get to that point, if you are put in a position like the position that I spoke about today on this podcast, you're likely going to find it more difficult to secure another role internally, but more so externally as well, because you get comfortable with what you need to know for that position. But when that position no longer exists and you've not made the effort or developed yourself to learn other things outside of that, that's where you will fall down. So I believe self-development is an absolute key focus. Use the company and its resources and its benefits to continue self-developing yourself inside and outside of work. I think that is fundamental, especially if you get put in this position, because you will be in a better position should you leave the business to actually gain employment elsewhere, the more you understand. And yes, it's difficult. Yes, it's hard work. And yes, it may require lots of hours outside of work, self-developing. But one thing I always say, being in the tech industry, is that when you join this industry, you embark on a never-ending learning journey. And that is so true, because technology is always advancing, things are always changing. And if you find yourself in your comfort zone and in a position where you feel like you can't be bothered self-developing, or don't need to self-develop, then you will not really be doing yourself any favors when it comes to trying to set yourself apart from everybody else. So self-development is a massive thing, and something that I focus on now and will continue to focus on for the rest of my career regardless. But the key message here is that don't find yourself getting comfortable. Always challenge yourself to grow. Use the tools that the company has on offer, whether that be learning resources, labs, whatever it may be. Leverage everything you can to improve yourself. So just as much as you're giving to that company, you're also taking and developing yourself as well. I've already alluded to the next point, which is not assuming that your job is ever secure. So as I said, I've been with the company that I work for over 7 years now, and I honestly thought my job was secure. I didn't ever feel as though I would lose or be in a position where I would be made redundant, because of many factors, whether that be the cybersecurity industry and how well it's performing, as opposed to the shortage that there is, or whether it's because I'm good at my job. I just never thought I would be in that position, and I certainly didn't think a company would be getting rid of me at least within 30 days after working for a company for so long. But now that I know that that is actually possible, I will never ever assume that my job is secure. And probably now I will look out for potential signs of problems that might be starting to brew within an organization, or when things are starting to change, and maybe put provisions in place before something can get to where it got to this time or more recently around, because it's not a nice situation to be in, especially when you absolutely enjoy the company that you work for, especially when it's, I guess, no time for redundancy is a good time, but I feel like being put in a position for redundancy just before Christmas is horrible, because you then have the added pressure of trying to make sure the family side of things are all set, and they're not worrying about Christmas and how things are going to be paid, how presents are going to be bought, etc. But yeah, it's just really not a nice place to be in. So I never will now assume that my job is secure, regardless of what position I'm in, regardless of where I work. It's just not something I will be able to do now. And I think if I had the mentality that I do have now, I could have potentially avoided being put in that situation by being proactive and looking for other internal positions before that happens. So sort of reading the room, if you like. And I think when you've been at a company for quite some time, you start to understand how a company works, how things such as acquisitions and mergers and LRs, or layoffs, redundancies, how those sort of things work. So I think now I will look at my job security in a different way. One important thing that I really want to point out, and I believe one important thing that really helped me, at least from a support standpoint, and sort of remaining calm, cool, and collective, is by having a network of people, friends, colleagues, family. A network is absolutely important. Don't assume you can handle situations like this by yourself. I'm a person that doesn't really talk about problems much and likes to take everything in and try and deal with everything myself. And I think on this occasion, it just wasn't possible, and I had to speak to people. My network internally within work, so my colleagues and friends, people who I consider as friends. I had to speak to my family and sort of get their perspective and their opinions, and sort of take on board some of their comments. And I believe that really helped sort of make me a little bit more level-headed, a little bit calmer, and give me a few more ideas and some hope for what was to come. So I believe having a network and building your network and maintaining that network is key. Don't just be leveraging networks when you actually need them. Keep up to date with these guys, whether it's your colleagues or family that you don't really speak to, whatever it may be. I believe it's important to keep developing those relationships, because in times of need, hopefully then people they're going to be there for you to as a shoulder to lean on. Another thing I would say is with regards to putting your eggs in one basket. Now, again, I didn't ever think that my position was not secure, and therefore I never really had any plan B. and therefore put my eggs all in one basket. I was all in, and I'm all in now, but at the same time, it's always worth having options, or it's always beneficial to have options. And by that I mean, maintaining those connections that you built externally if you was looking for other jobs, or if you do have contacts external to the business, also leveraging those contacts internally, and just staying up to date with the market and seeing what's available, etc., so that if you do find yourself in a position like this, you know where to navigate, you know who to turn to, you know where to look and apply for your next position. Because if you're like me, if you are put in that position, you really want to make sure that you have a job secure before your redundancy period ends, regardless of what you might get paid out for as your redundancy package, whatever that may be. I'm the type of person that likes to make sure that my next move is sort of clear, and I know what I'm going to sort of be going into. So I will now continue to maintain my contacts. I have new places to look for opportunities. I've not closed any doors or burnt any bridges, and therefore if I am ever in a position like the one that I was in last month, I will hopefully now find it easier to look for my next opportunity, because I'm not now just focused on the now and having my eggs all in one basket. I'm now also maintaining, if you like, or making sure that the next step is not too far away, should that day ever come again. And I guess the last thing I would say with regards to what I've learned, with now knowing that everybody is expendable, regardless of the position that you're in, or regardless of how good you are, or how good you think you are, or the skills that you have, I've come to realize that hopping from one company to another is not necessarily a good idea. Now, the reason I wanted to mention this is because I was thinking about this throughout my stressful month last month, and thinking about the people that often jump to other companies to try and secure promotions or pay rises quicker than they would in their actual company that they're working for. Now, these people often will do this over maybe as short as a 6-month period to, a year onwards, 2 years, before looking for a new position, and they'll work their way up the ladder quite quick. And while it might work for some, and while it might be all well and good for some, the thing that I've come to realize about this is that it's not necessarily a good move to do that when it comes to redundancy. And the reason I want to mention that is because the position that I was put in after working for the company, as I say, for over 7 years, it meant that if I was made redundant, I actually had a good enough package to see me through for a good couple of months. And that's because of the time that I've worked at the company, etc. Now, I've realized that if you jump from one company to another, let's say, for instance, you work for a company for a year and then you jump to another company within that year to secure that promotion or pay rise, and then that company decides to put you in for redundancy a year later, your service at that company is going to be very minimal. So you're not going to, while you was getting paid more, you're not going to really have a good redundancy package, and therefore when it comes to being put in that situation, you're not really going to have a lot of, your redundancy package is not going to be good. So you're going to there's going to be more urgency for you to look for where your next paycheck's going to come from, as opposed to staying at a company for a long time and, getting a better redundancy package and not having to really worry within the next 30 days, let's say, if you are laid off. So for me, I still believe that working for a company for a good amount of years, 5+ years, let's say, is still a better approach than jumping around to other companies in short periods of time. And as I said, it might work for some people might enjoy it, some people might love doing that. That's totally fine. But I think me and the person I am, it's not something that I would look to do. So with that, I will wrap that up there. I just wanted to get on this podcast today and really give you an idea of sort of what craziness I've been through the last month, and just labor the point that we are all expendable regardless of the position you hold, the skills you have. It doesn't matter. If a company wants to get rid of you tomorrow and replace you with somebody else, they will, and business will continue as usual. And it's not a nice feeling to be in that position. So I wanted to really share with you on this podcast today what I've been through and some of the lessons that I've learned now that I know we are all expendable. Thank you for listening. You have been listening to the Tech Dialogue podcast. Did you know that you can find the video version of this podcast on our YouTube channel? All you have to do is search Official Tech Dialogue on YouTube to start watching now.